Welcome to Reimagine Communication. This is an unfolding dialogue between Liv Larsson and Rung. For 3 decades, they have explored nonviolent communication, not only as a way to navigate conflict, but as a doorway into something larger. What it means to be human, together. Here, communication is not technique. It is presence. It is listening for what longs to be heard. It is daring to stay open in the midst of complexity. These conversations are living questions about truth, about connection, about the courage to meet life as it is and as it could be. You are invited to listen, to pause, and perhaps to discover something new moving in you. Let's begin.
We're back again. Hi, Liv.
Hi. Early morning this time.
Yes, very early morning. Maybe our voices are not recognizable.
Yeah.
I thought we have a conversation about something that I've heard many people think about and talk about, and that is, why is it so hard to master or to learn nonviolent communication? Are you in for that?
That is a very good one because it's a kind of a mystery with a process that is kind of simple in from the outside, and really it seems to be intricate on the inside.
Yeah. So, what would you say from your uh, own learning, but also having been teaching NVC for a long time? What would you say is like the first struggle people or you kind of stumble upon after having had this, like, wow, this is so cool, this is helping me, and then you kind of hit your toe on a threshold, and what threshold would how would you call that threshold?
I would say that, yeah, there are some similarities, but there are also, of course, differences because people come into studying nonviolent communication from different contexts, different views of the world, different views of their subjective inner self, their kind of the mystery of your inner person. So I think it's slightly differs from person to person, but there are certainly some places, for example, but it doesn't work just because I say certain things certain ways. There has to be something more. That is one thing that I see. What do you see?
But hold on a little bit. You mean that people don't? I didn't really get that. Like, why? Say that again, kind of.
That people learn that nonviolent communication is about observation, feeling, need, and request. That's like the form of it. That's the way we are able to have a container or something to speak about where communication is supposed to flow better. And then people try it out, and sometimes they go like, wow, it really changed something. And for some, it changes something, and at the same time as it opens up one door, it also kind of closes another door because people get irritated in the way they speak. And so it's kind of strange to know when to use the form and when to not use the form and the different result that gives. And that takes some time to kind of test out and try out and learn about.
Mm.
Is that more clear?
Yeah, yeah. So it's about the language and seeing how it fits. So it's not like a static thing. It always works, but so if one is not able to put it in the context where one is.
Yeah, yeah. And then some people give up and say it's just too robotic or too much formula. I'll go for something else, and then they don't learn it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
One of
is
the things, I've noticed is that um, we're not kind of aware about that people are autonomous in the sense that even though I might know what I want, people still might want to say no, and then they get back into this forcing mode that they. So the problem is, as I would see it, that it's really difficult to be aware that I have a will and you have a will, and how do we dance about that? How do we create the cooperation? So being aware of a little bit of a bigger circle, I would say, is one challenge. It's not just up to me to say what I want and then I'll get it. And I think that's, if you look at the news, that's also pretty much a common struggle for many about conflicts and such.
Hmm.
Yeah, what else?
Well, for me, it's also I can hear the challenge for some to go from speaking general things like one might think or one might like or isn't it a good idea to, and then we learn at nonviolent communication and we learn about setting me at the center of my communication, meaning I feel, I see, I need. And that process might feel awkward for some people that do care a lot about the we or the that doesn't want to be seen as selfish or self-centered. And then they struggle and they might turn then into the empathic side of nonviolent communication, the listening, and kind of get stuck there because it feels kind of safer to be empathetic is also kind of celebrated and cherished in the nonviolent communities. And then you never fully learn the flow in between the expression and the empathy part. I think we've talked about that quite a lot in the other podcast sessions. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's it's hard to hold both the honesty, the self-expression part, where I am at the center. I need to know what I want and what I need, and at the same time, with the other hand, kind of holding the you, holding the other party. So it's easy to lean in either side, kind of, and then it becomes almost like two different things. That for some nonviolent communication is about honest expression, and for some it's about empathic listening.
Mm.
And as I understand it, it's actually a little bit of both. And because if no one is honest, there's nothing to listen to, kind of. And I'm not just speaking about the spoken word, but we also are honest with our actions, like how we behave. Yeah. But there's something about that I find kind of curious, because you said another day, and the other day you said something that kind of stuck to me when I was like questioning some activities, like how much time do I want to spend, for instance, skiing that I really enjoy, and then your your comment one, well, your nervous system likes when you do things that gives you pleasure, like fun. So that is also a thing, like to be aware of that we have a nervous system, and we're kind of the only one actually responsible for it.
Mm.
Um, so how would you kind of formulate putting the nervous system as the challenge or the threshold for one's learning? Like, is it about being aware of it, or being able to kind of learn things that regulate it, or how would you put it?
I would put it so that sometimes I myself get stuck in, I get irritated, I want to communicate about something, and I do it in a way that doesn't really work. And so many times when I pause, or you help me, or someone else helps me, I realize I need to have a break, or I need to do something fun, not just talk about problems. I need to eat, or I need to either move or sleep. So many times, if I do that first, if there's a chance, there's not always a chance to do that, but if I do have a way to take care of my nervous system, my brain first, then it usually, the thing I wanted to communicate about is not as hard. And sometimes with NVC, we kind of simplify or psychologize things so much that we forget that, well, maybe a break is the best thing. We get hooked up by the communication is the best thing. So it becomes like almost like new values and new principles. And if they don't also include that we are physical beings, then the learning progress will be slower, I'd
Mhm.
say. Both if you go to a training where that is happening, but in your ordinary life.
Hmm.
That's
But
that's um, that's one way of seeing it. Do you want to add something to that, or?
yeah, there's something like a pattern that I've seen, both in for you, for me, and for other people. Like when I struggle with something, um, and I can't solve it, I can't figure out how to say things or how to do things, and then I kind of surrender to the idea that maybe I need help. And then I call a friend, or I ask a question to someone. And then they might not be so quick answering, but just me kind of recognizing that, yeah, I'm not alone, I need help, and then going for it, like in action, asking for it. I don't know if that regulates my nervous system, but many, many times I kind of solve the problem myself, but only after I've kind of surrendered to the idea that I need help and I've
Mm.
actually reached out. And I know that you have that a lot with your computer. Like you can't solve things, and then you ask me, and before I answer, you solve it. So
I think it's my computer gets really scared of you coming and tampering with it, so it just obeys
so
me.
so it's the computer's nervous system that freaks out, you mean?
It must be.
And I think I believe that this is part of us being a social creatures. And sometimes when we're so focused on me, that we forget that there's, I think it's about nervous system. Like it's have a like having a dog or a good friend in the same room. You feel good about yourself in a different way than if you just enjoy your day by yourself.
And how do
Do,
you mean it impacts your learning of nonviolent communication? Like, how do you connect that?
because for me, nonviolent communication helps or aims at me being more aware of the interdependence, like how I'm part of something uh, bigger in the context where I live, with humans, with nature. It helps me be aware of that. And sometimes when I think it's up to me and it's all about me, and what I need and what I dream about, I think the nervous system might suffer.
Hmm.
That's how I see it. Do you?
Yeah,
What do you
but
have to say about that?
well, for me, it might be nervous system because our nervous system is also supported by having other people close. So if we want to learn nonviolent communication alone, or we are the only ones, and we don't have a place where we can share. And of course, it's part of the learning, but it's also part of the experience, like the experience of being safe enough to be to build trust and to kind of explore, to do things that are new, and then relaxing into that it is not about being perfect, but it's about trying out listening, trying out expressing. And everyone doesn't have that kind of community. And I think that's one of the real hard places to learn NVC. So I'm always super happy when I get like two friends that comes to a training together, or two siblings, or two person from the same family, because I trust more that then they will learn together, and in that way also regulate each other's nervous system with care for how challenging it can be.
Yeah, and that sometimes also happens that you meet someone who is also wanting to learn on a training or on a program, and you become not only, friends because you want to learn, but you become friends for life.
Hmm.
Uh, and maybe a new kind of friend, like maybe the friends we had before we started practicing nonviolent conscious, if they're not interested in these questions, then it's like we have this space that we would like to explore, but it's we're alone about it.
Yeah.
And YouTube
We,
only takes you so far.
Yeah, and when we try NVC and we are not received, maybe in a workplace setting or in a family gathering, and people think you're behaving so strangely, that is hard. It's hard. Humans like to kind of blend in and have community. And of course, we need to maybe stick out to speak about new things. But and it can actually also help us learn by being clear on what is it that we find is different. So it's an opportunity, but also a place where it feels like a closed door. So yeah, I use NVC with my friends, but not with my family. Or I use NVC at the workplace, but not with my family. That is quite often comments. And it really shows how challenging it can be with that.
Yeah. And about life circumstances, looking back, like we didn't have any kids when we started learning.
Hmm.
So then the learning was about what was going on in our lives before that, and then we became parents, and all the challenges with the parenting and all the problems that you need to learn how to resolve, and then your kids grow up and maybe they move away from home or they become more self-sufficient. So this process of just living and having like these chapters in life, I would say that they all carry different kind of learnings. So if we stick to life, we will have enough material for learning and integrating more of it.
Yeah. I
Do
like
do you
it.
see do you see that as well? That the school of life kind of as one of the challenges.
Well, when you mention being a parent and having kids, uh, it really becomes like two parents having different value systems, having to meet somewhere. What kind of values do we give forward to our kid? What kind of norms do we live under? How are parents supposed to behave, and so on, and all that will then be needed to be fit into how we communicate. And if we want to kind of at the same time as this is going on learn nonviolent communication, it's going to be really hard. And one of the things I see is also I hear sometimes with the name nonviolent communication, people think it's about not being angry. It's not about and it's not about setting boundaries. It's just about kind of being nice and friendly, and just giving in or things like that. And then it becomes really hard to learn nonviolent communication because for me, life is clearly showing us that we need to be able to set boundaries and use protective use of force and stop someone and say, please wait, this is not working for me or for my child. So we might get lost in the ideas around what does nonviolent communication mean, and then have a harder time learning.
So it's like misinterpretation of what it is, or false marketing because how it's the words non-violent, you mean?
I don't know if it's false marketing, but it's unclear to people, and I'm not claiming that I know exactly, what to put in it, but I do know that people say, oh, they get surprised when in trainings we do what we call protective use of force, meaning to say no without maybe even without explaining it, but just saying no to protect someone. And then they think, but this is not NVC, and it's a struggle to integrate the well, making sure at 7 o'clock I don't allow my child to keep on playing computer games if that's what we agreed on, and to keep to that, even if our child wants to communicate about it and argue about it, I still say no. And then I might talk as soon as possible. I might talk about that, but it's not about then being open to giving in, but it's about being willing to talk about it. And that is a difference that is hard for many.
Yeah, the comment that is kind of funny at many trainings is that, can I say that? Can I really say it like that? Like
Mhm.
sometimes we have these ideas on what we can communicate, what we can say, and they are limiting us. So maybe I understand this differently now because yeah, cool.
Mm. I also hear people say that you're not supposed to be angry when you do nonviolent communication. I don't know where that came from, but it's like anger is so equated with violence, and you can be angry in so many different ways, and take responsibility for it, rather than blaming when you're angry or shouting when you're angry. There and that is, of course, an unknown territory for many, because they haven't been in a setting where that is actually happening.
Okay, so then that kind of concludes one thing for me is that nonviolent communication is kind of complex and difficult in itself. So just knowing that if you want to master it, it's a big chunk to kind of digest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful journey of going through the different bumps and challenges, isn't it? It's like a mystery. How can it be a companion in life and follow you through those different periods?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I can always see that struggles or periods of my life when I was struggling, and now looking back at it, there were some things that I hadn't learned yet, that I didn't wasn't aware of, or I wasn't able to kind of act on, or so then I see, oh yeah, I don't know if I would always call it wonderful, but it's an adventure, and that there's learning in it. And when I have that eye to look for the learning, it is really meaningful. And I believe that's one of the reasons why I've stuck to it for so many years now.
Thank you for saying that. I like that. It's like I have memories of, I want to be really good at this. I want to be the expert, the person, the go-to person on nonviolent communication. And at one point, I saw how much that stopped me from just being human and nurturing my communication skills in the way they unfold, not being an expert where I will kind of do this method on you. So there's been those kind of phases developmentally as well, in a sense of going from that to going to kind of, well, let's see what works. It's not about being an expert, but about achieving some kind of clear results. And then that was kind of a phase that passed into, well, it's all about, sitting down in a circle and communicate with people, which was also a really good
And the
learning
circle is
step.
kind of the must, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't sit in any other form than the circle.
Sometimes I play with that in trainings. I put chairs out in a square or in a row or something, just to see what people say, and they get really upset if they're used to the circle. And I poke them a bit. I challenge them a bit. Can't you use communication skills? Sitting, standing, laying down, sitting at tables. Then what use is it? Does it have to be a circle? So then it can become part of the learning. But at one point, it was kind of for me as well. It was, I cannot do it if I cannot see everyone,
Yeah.
like in a circle, that a circle allows. And that was partly supportive and partly then stopping the process. Do you agree?
Yeah, I have a beautiful memory of we being like 60 people, and we're taking decisions together and having that experience. That was wonderful. And of course, I have many memories when that is not happening. So I like if it works, great. If it doesn't
Mm.
work, let's try something else.
Mm. Yeah, and now we're here in this podcast trying to see, are there more nuances, are there more kind of ways where we can look at communication so that it really serves us as we grow as humans and as communities grows and as society grows and as our kids grow up and so on. And I find that so fascinating to look at something that was so concrete to me when I started learning it, like concrete in the way of its empathy and honesty, its those four components, and there are a few principles. That was kind of what it was. And now, of course, after these decades of us exploring this, it is something different.
Yeah, so how would you say, what is the difference between, well, it's some steps, uh, some kind of frames that help us to focus and to put it into words. So what is different now from that? Some principles and
Well, the fun thing when you say that, it's like I I want to share nonviolent communication with all that, with all the form, with the intention, with all that kind of more static. And now I want to share that with the clarity that there will be a point when this person that learns this, where they will say, ah, but there's something more. And then they remember that I already said that when I did the basics. The so when now I holding that there will be, if the person continues learning nonviolent communication, there will be different struggles and possibilities to grow that I didn't mention before, that I didn't even know. But now, when I've been in it for a while, I can at least make a little bit of a map of what might turn up for this person.
so it's a little bit like learning some martial arts. You have white belt, and then you learn how to, greet and behave on the mat, and then you learn some techniques, and then when you continue, you get the yellow belt, and you get all these, and then you discover, and then there's people running around with like black belts, and they look the same, but there's still some difference.
Mm.
Is it like a little bit like using that as a metaphor that there are unseen things, and
Yeah.
you need to kind of spend time practicing and failing consciously to be able to see them, kind of. So it's not, they can't be read only, but you can make a bookmark, like you said, like this will happen in your future. If it's tomorrow or in 5 years, let's find out.
Yeah, and one of the challenges around that, when you say that, is also that everyone knows something about communication when they enter your training in nonviolent communication, which might not be the same, well, a little bit the same as martial arts, like how to how to behave in a group and so on. But when people come in and they're going to learn about communication, to acknowledge that, like we talk a lot about, that we usually share nonviolent communication with adults, and we we want to acknowledge that people already know things, but also that they don't know what we know, and that we can give them that can make what they already know work better. And there's usually some tension there in learning something as adults, which is different than when a kid learns something.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't know what other people know until we spend time and kind of figure it out. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I have a thought about another challenge is like, with whom are you learning nonviolent communication? Like your teacher or your friend or your practice group, or because if that person or that group kind of leans one of the directions of the things we talked about, that will kind of influence quite a lot. Like if how people frame it, and what if they don't see all the complexity about, we need to care for our bodies and nervous system, and we need to find balance in many areas of our life, and sometimes it's easy to get lost, I would say, if nonviolent communication is reduced to like, oh, it's about empathy only, or it's about needs, or it's what do you have to say about that?
The beautiful thing for most people, like you said about YouTube before, that is that there are now many sources. So learning from different trainers, people that share nonviolent communication is one way to make sure you get different angles and different perspectives. Well, hopefully that you get that. You might need meet three people that teaches it very similarly. But it's also kind of learning from different people and with different people will also help you learn the way you want to learn.
Yeah. So how do you, like, what is, if people would like to learn from you, like what would they get? Like what is your style? If, could you, have you ever thought of that, to put that into words?
Well, I've thought of it a lot in our Reimagine communication program, where we kind of tried to meet people that and from in a certain place, and I would say they are all into nonviolent communication and kind of know what it's about, and they usually want to experience it, not only hearing us speak about certain aspects of communication, but they really want to practice it and maybe even question it, maybe even do something a slightly bit different than what they usually do and see what kind of effect that has. So that is, I would say, describe my style more and more. How can I make it very practical and at the same time very poised, very clearly focused on something certain with that kind of exploration?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what about you? How would you?
Well, it's a good question. I like clarity. I find a lot of joy in kind of understanding things, but also from different angles, like making sense of things. And so interpreting because how we interpret things kind of affects what we experience and what results we kind of get to. So I find that really interesting, to kind of be able to look at things, experiences from different angles. So I think that's also what I enjoy with the coaching that I do. People have problems that they kind of need to or have to do something about. So then we kind of play with moving it around and looking at from different angles and then coming up with new ways of meeting needs, or meeting more needs, I would say.
Mm.
So I think it's a good combo that we work together. We're not the same. Uh,
Hmm.
you do all the things that I'm bad at. Good. Uh, so, so, so I think that's a good combination. Pair
Mm.
up with someone who is balancing, the balancing factor.
Yeah, I think that's a very good advice actually to do things together, or at least to have someone that you brainstorm with, or someone that has a say on your if you're sharing nonviolent communication, to really find your style, but also be affected by others. I think it's super useful.
Yeah, and the sun is getting up, and we need to kind of uh, keep on moving in this day. But there's one thing I think worth mentioning is why we offer longer training programs. Like I would like to talk about time a little bit as well,
Mm. Hmm.
because we don't offer so many short things, short trainings. But we offer longer programs, and I would say it's partly because of all the things we talked about today, and also some more, like the context of like putting our learning in the context and getting to know each other over time. So I'm curious if you want to add something, like how do you see time affecting the learning process? And then I mean time with specific people. Like we all live in time, but like spending time with us or with a specific person practicing and learning. How do you see that? Do you have some words of wisdom on that?
Well, I love to be part of those long trainings. Like our mediation program is stretching over a year, and it's as a concert choice. Some people say, but can't you just kind of make it into half a year and you know make more of the training and so on. And over the stretch of a year, people get to be in a small group. And that's where a lot of the magic will happen. Like slowly, gently, people will be more open to go outside of their box of how they usually do things and try out something new. And that's really where learning happens. When they kind of when they're willing to feel discomfort over not knowing and being willing to risk looking like a fool, being risking not to be a good student, but actually to do mistakes. And that's really like doing that without risking an important relationship in their life, or without risking losing their job, or a real mediation where people might get really hurt, but that they can do this very, very close to what is going on in life outside of that little safe container. That's where a lot of the learning is reported to happen. And that takes time. That takes like meeting once, meeting twice, meeting like up to 20, 30 times, as in our programs, to really go for it and create that same sense of trust. I think that's one of the things why it works.
Yeah, and I like that. And I would like to also add that if we do something a lot of times, like you said, then we might start to see patterns. Like things happen again and again and again. So we become aware of them. Like if there's a certain kind of situation that comes up in decision making, or there's the same kind of conflict coming up. So then the curiosity of like, what is it? And in all the groups I'm in, this conflict comes up. and and then finally I'll notice, wow, in all the groups I'm in, I'm always there. So what is my part? Like, what am I holding back, or who am I running over, so to say? So I think the repetition part is, it's not about finding faults. It's about becoming more aware and curious how we actually affect our learning, but also other people's learning. So, yeah.
There's one more thing that I like to say too, and it's about authenticity. And I think I spoke about that in last session too. But it's been one of my themes recently. Understanding how when we strive for authenticity, we might not learn as fast or as much as we like. And at the other hand, we want to strive for authenticity to kind of find the core of how do I want to show up in the world? What is my voice? How do I listen to people? But if we are not allowing ourselves to kind of try something that feels a bit awkward, that maybe I wouldn't say is really authentic, it's kind of something that I'm trying out, something new, then it will be in the way of me learning. So that I really think we need to talk about authenticity, Kai, for this program, because there is something there that I think can be so helpful to see, that it both stopping us and supporting us. Do you
Well,
see what I mean?
yeah, it's like a balancing act. Sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it's keeping us from trying new things because it doesn't feel right, or it's not me, or
Mm-hmm.
and then this me is also changing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but yeah. So I'll
That's what I mean. We need a program, a podcast session on that.
yeah. Yes, let's postpone that for some other conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So it's already, sun is up, and it's not a sunny day, even though I would like it to be. So if you're listening to this, hope you're having a great day, and hope you find some inspiration or meaning in our conversations.
And maybe some questions for us.
And how do people then connect? Well, in the podcast, like episode description, there is a way to connect if there's questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So thanks for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation with Liv Larsson and Kay Rung. If you want to explore more of their work, upcoming trainings, or dive deeper into nonviolent communication, you'll find resources at www.frireliv.com. In the show notes, you'll also find links to books mentioned in this episode, as well as more information about our international mediation program and the Reimagine Communication program, designed for those who want to deepen their practice in mediation and bring nonviolent communication more fully into everyday life. Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay curious, stay connected.